Hello, and welcome to
Partners in Paranormal.
I'm Grayson,
I'm Jordan.
and we're going to be reading creepy stories that we find on Reddit, or you guys send in to us once we actually have people that will listen to us. So, a little bit about us before we start reading is that we are together.
Yeah.
And I love creepy things. Jordan loves creepy things.
I like creepy stories.
So we just decided that we would read some stories together. Hopefully, do it consistently.
Yeah.
And post
maybe.
a podcast / YouTube thing about it. And our kitty Ichi is
Currently on the
messing
table.
with the camera right now,
I
laying
have
down.
a loose table, so it's
Okay.
gonna be wobbly.
So now we can start.
So this is going to be a story from r/no sleep from Information Remote 865, and it is titled, "I went exploring with some friends. I'm the only one that survived."
Okay.
Grace won't take this one, I guess.
Oh, okay. Okay. I went exploring with some friends. I'm the only one that survived. And Jordan, feel free to chime in.
Well,
As I go. I used to think that Mammoth Cave was just another adventure. A tick off our list. It was supposed to be fun. A weekend to explore the shadows with my best friends to test our nerves in the endless dark. But somewhere down there, under miles of stone, something went wrong. Now, one of us is missing, and I swear, I can still hear him calling. Is this a real story? Also?
no. It's no sleep. It's just creepypastas.
Oh. We'd been going for hours, our voices echoing through the tunnels, each one mocking the confidence we had when we started. There was me, Sam, and my friends, Luke, Jared, and Ben. Ben was always the daring one, the first to wander ahead, the one who'd get us into trouble just to laugh it off. But when he didn't come back, no one was laughing. It's strange. We retraced our steps, searched every crevice, calling his name until our voices scraped raw. Nothing. Just an endless silence, heavy and swallowing. And then, the faintest echo, like Ben's voice drifting from somewhere deep in the shadows. Luke was the first to hear him calling. He stopped dead, his hand shooting up as we walked, telling us to listen. We froze, straining against the thick silence.
Where are you?
Right there.
Oh. Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Did you hear that? He whispered, his voice barely louder than a breath.
Wait, no, let me mute the voices. Wait, who was that? Was that Ben?
I have no idea. None of us had, but as we stood there, letting the silence settle around us, we heard it. A faint, distant call, almost swallowed by the stone around us. It was Ben's voice.
Oh.
You're right. Unmistakably. He was calling out, the sound barely reaching us. That was weird. Did you hear that?
What?
Outside?
What was it?
It sounded like a buzzing.
Oh, I can't hear that.
The sound barely reaching us, but bouncing off the cave walls in strange, warped echoes. The direction was wrong, though. The call wasn't coming from where we'd last seen him. It was coming from one of the tunnels we hadn't even traveled down. But maybe somehow the paths were connected. It wasn't impossible for cave tunnels to intersect. We were probably about 2 miles down at this point, so deep that the silence felt alive, closing in around us. The chill in the air seeped into our bones, and every breath echoed back like a reminder of how far we'd come. The walls felt tighter here, the space around us shrinking with each step. Our lights cast shaky beams on the rough stone, cutting through just enough darkness to keep us moving. We'd packed extra batteries, sure, but even with the supplies, an uneasy feeling twisted in my gut. Still, leaving wasn't an option. Ben was down there somewhere, and we couldn't just abandon him in the dark.
You could.
Wait, how did Ben get lost in the first place?
I don't remember.
We walked down a few hundred feet, calling out Ben's name into the dark, then waiting in silence, hoping for any kind of response. The cave swallowed our voices, leaving only the faint drip of water somewhere far off. Then, after what felt like ages, we heard him. "What the fuck?" Luke whispered, his voice tight and shaky, eyes darting back toward the path we just covered. Jared, louder than any of us, shouted back, All right, Ben.
You can stop messing with us now, man. This isn't funny, bro." How's that?
Good. I wanted to believe it, that Ben was just messing with us, hiding in some shadowed nook and waiting to jump out. But as I stared into the empty tunnel behind us, a chill crept over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow it wasn't really Ben. What do you think
really
it was?
Ben. It's a little goblin.
A demon.
Little goblin.
We backtracked our lights, or doppelganger. We backtracked our lights, slicing through the shadows as we searched every inch of the area. We moved slowly, scouring every nook, every crack in the walls, but there wasn't a single trace of Ben. Not a footprint, not even a scuff mark. He was just gone.
Oh my goodness.
This reminds me of a book that I read called Curious Tides. Can't remember who wrote it, but they get trapped in some other dimension on the other side of the cave. They're in a cave and then they open up a dimension and then they go inside and then they're trapped in there and nobody knows where they are. So basically I just spoiled the book.
This sounds more like another creepypasta. Or not like a creepypasta, just a fictional story about a dude and his friend that explore this one cave over a week or so. And every single time they go down there, shit moves, or stuff moves, rocks move around, new passageways open. What is doing this?
Like the Cave of Lovers in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No, totally different than that, because it was a little goblin man who carried around big rocks and then tried to kill them. Injured one of them one time.
Okay, back to the story. Eventually, we returned to the central cavern, slumping down on the cold stone to catch our breath and regroup. I told the others what had been gnawing at me, the dread curling around my thoughts, but Luke was quick to brush it off. "Oh, come on, man, you know Ben is just fucking with us," he said, his tone forced, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "Well, how did he end up back here, then? When was he down there before?" I shot back. "I'm telling you guys, something isn't right." Before anyone could answer, Ben's voice echoed again, faint but unmistakable. This time, it came from the tunnel we'd seen him go down first.
Come on, guys, this way.
His voice drifted down the rocky corridors, a lazy drawl that somehow felt wrong, like a demon. Jared sprang to his feet, shouting down the tunnel, "Screw you, Ben. When I see you, I'm gonna beat the shit out of you." And Ben's just dead. Then we heard it, a low, chuckling laugh, the sound echoing, but from a completely different tunnel. Luke and Jared exchanged glances, the bravado draining from their faces. It was like the air had thickened, and now they felt it too. Something was off.
Oh, mimics. But in the sense of just copying people's voices. There's just a bunch of them.
A chill crept over all of us, settling in our bones as Ben's laughter faded into the shadows. We huddled together, whispering hurriedly about what to do. The idea of leaving came up quick, but Luke shut it down fast. "We can't just leave Ben down here, guys," he insisted, voice firm but edged with unease.
It's already gone.
Jared shook his head, glancing down the distant exit. "I'm going. I'll call the cops and tell them our friend's missing. I'll come back with the search party." And that is what you should do, Jared. Because it's not Ben. It was a bad idea.
Then everyone else will die instead of them.
Well, they should all go with him.
Oh, that's fair.
It was a bad idea, honestly. Part of me felt relief at the thought of professionals with equipment and experience, but Luke wouldn't budge. His jaw set, determination in his eyes. He wanted to keep looking, convinced that Ben was close, just around the next corner. Jared didn't wait for more argument. With a last look back, he took off down the path toward the exit, his flashlight bouncing along the walls until he was out of sight. Luke and I stood there in silence, the weight of the decision hanging heavy between us. Eventually, we decided to search a little longer. Just a little longer, we told ourselves. After Jared disappeared from sight, Luke and I ventured down the same tunnel Ben had vanished into. We called out voices barely steady, and after a moment, Ben's voice drifted back, faint and distorted, like it was caught in a slow echo. The sound seeped out of a dark, narrow crevice ahead, just wide enough for us to squeeze through. We
I like how
moved.
nothing has happened.
Huh?
Nothing's happened. They're just walking around.
Well,
Ben's just gone.
yeah.
Are other people gone?
No, it's just Ben.
Okay, it's just
And they're
Ben.
about to go through a narrow crevice that they're probably not going to get out of.
That's good.
We moved cautiously, each step slower than the last, feeling a prickling sensation on our necks, like unseen eyes were watching us from the shadows. The path bent sharply to the right, creating the illusion that it might loop back toward one of the other tunnels. Luke forced a chuckle. See, he's just messing with us. But as we rounded the corner, our lights caught something that made us stop dead. A jagged hole yawned open in the middle of the path, wide and deep, cutting off the tunnel. The space was too narrow to walk side by side, so I trailed behind Luke as he edged forward and aimed his flashlight down into the darkness below.
No, not both the cats.
It's the gate to hell. What is it? I whispered, trying to peer around him. When he turned to me, his face was drained of color, eyes wide, lips parted like he couldn't quite find the words. He swallowed, barely managing to get it out. He's down there, Luke said, his voice trembling. My blood ran cold.
He's down there.
What do you mean? I stammered, heart pounding against my ribs. He's down there, Sam, Luke whispered, voice cracking. Dead. We knew that the whole time.
The words hit me like a punch.
I stood there, numb with disbelief, until Luke grabbed my arm, his grip almost painful.
We have to get out of here, he said, voice tight with terror.
Without another word, we turned and started back, moving fast but steady. Our lights casting frantic beams along the rough stone walls. As we reached the tunnel that led back to the central cavern, another voice echoed through the darkness. Guys. Neither of us paused. We broke into a sprint, feet pounding against the ground, breaths ragged with panic. We didn't care where it was coming from, we just wanted out. In his haste, Luke stumbled over a jagged rock and fell hard, his flashlight skidding across the ground before shattering into pieces.
Convenient.
How would your flashlight shatter into pieces?
Exactly.
I stopped, reaching down to pull him up, my light sweeping the walls as I moved. And that's when I saw it, a figure, pale and naked, crouched at the far end of the tunnel. Watching us with hollow, empty eyes, it looked almost human, but something was horribly, horribly wrong. Oh. Okay. Oh my god, I muttered, my voice barely a whisper, trembling as I stared at the figure. Luke turned, catching sight of it, his face twisting in terror. He grabbed my arm, jolting me out of my daze. Come on, Sam, he urged, pulling me forward. We didn't look back, rushing through the darkness, desperate to put as much distance as possible between us and whatever that thing was. Every shadow felt like it was closing in on us, every echo stretching our nerves tighter. As we reached the main tunnel that led out of the cave, we saw a figure lying on the ground ahead. Jared. He was sprawled, face down, motionless, his flashlight lying a few feet away, casting an eerie glow on the stone.
Wait, that's not the one that shattered?
That was Luke.
Wow.
Oh god.
Also, all I can imagine is just like Gollum, just sitting there,
Oh yeah.
sort of thing. Or maybe it's Ben just all shriveled up.
I don't think so. I think it's a demon.
They sucked the soul out of that boy.
I think it's a demon. Oh god, I breathed, heart racing as we knelt beside him. He must have tripped, maybe knocked himself out in his rush to get out. But when we turned him over, the breath left my lungs. His face was unrecognizable, crushed and bloody as if something had beaten him down over and over.
Goodness.
The horror of it froze us in place, and I could barely think, only feel the cold grip of fear sinking deeper into my bones. That's when we heard it. A voice drifting from the shadows, but this time it wasn't Ben's. It was Jared's. Come on, guys. This way, the voice called, soft and taunting. I swung my flashlight toward the sound, heart hammering, and there it was, standing just beyond the light's reach, pale, humanoid, but wrong in every way. Its skin was chalky, almost luminescent under the beam, and its eyes solid black, empty and endless.
I hate solid black eyes.
The thing stared at us for a moment, then turned. Its movement jerky and unnatural, and ran down the tunnel, laughing in Jared's voice, a sick, twisted echo of the friend we'd known. Jorb, you're moving the table whenever you...
My bad.
Our stack of books is not staying.
Very still.
Can't touch the table at all.
The whole thing's just gonna be shaky.
What the hell? Luke whispered, voice barely audible over my own pounding heart. He grabbed my arm, his grip trembling. We have to get out of here, man. I didn't need any convincing. We bolted, feet slamming against the stone, the darkness stretching ahead of us like a maw, ready to swallow us whole. Like a maw? M-A-W?
A mall?
Maw?
Mall? I don't know. No, Mao is Mao.
As we
All I can think
ran,
of is like a facial expression. Mall.
the creature's footsteps echoed behind us, its pace relentless. My heart pounded, my breaths coming in ragged gasps as we pushed forward. Suddenly, Luke stumbled and fell, hitting the ground hard. I
Okay.
skidded to a stop, spinning around, and that's when I saw it. The creature had caught up to him, gripping his leg and starting to drag him back into the shadows. Luke clawed at the ground, his face contorted in terror. Without thinking, I shone my flashlight directly on it. And as the beam hit, the creature shrank back, raising its long, bony arms to shield its huge black eyes. It couldn't stand the light, that much is clear. I stepped toward Luke, light fixed on the creature as it hissed and retreated, slipping back into the pitch-black depths of the cave. We backed away slowly, both of us trembling, the silence around us setting like a heavy weight. We kept moving, trying to keep our steps steady, though every nerve in our bodies screamed to run. Luke fumbled in his bag, pulling out his spare flashlight, and now with both beams cutting through the shadows, we scanned every crevice, every dark corner around us. The creature was silent now, but its presence clung to us, a feeling so thick it was hard to breathe. We both knew it was still near, lurking just out of sight, watching and waiting. Minutes stretched on, each one more suffocating than the last. But then, just as panic threatened to take over, we just saw it, the cave entrance.
Oh, no way they made it.
A sliver of remaining daylight spilling in,
That's where shit gets real, Grayson.
piercing through the darkness like a lifeline. It was so close, a beacon of hope after the nightmare that had nearly swallowed us whole. We made it, or at least we thought we did. Step by step, we edged closer to the exit, the sunlight drawing us in so close I could almost feel its warmth. Holy crap, this is a long story.
It's almost done. So towards Luke, paralyzed
okay,
for a
got it,
split
got it.
second.
But just as we reached the final stretch, the creature dropped from above, a blur, pale of skin and black eyes crashing into Luke and sending him sprawling to the ground. I whipped around frantically, aiming my light, but it was too late. In an instant, the creature pinned him down, smashing his head against the stone with brutal force. Paralyzed for a split second, my mind screamed at me to act, to do something, but instinct looked over. I turned and ran, abandoning Luke's final muffled cries, leaving my friend behind. Tears streamed down my face, blurring my vision as I pushed myself forward, barely seeing the light ahead. If that was me, would you leave or would you stay and help me?
I mean, well, wait. The flashlight fell again?
No. If there was a creature
Hmm.
smashing my face against this
There is.
rock.
I don't think there's anything I'm going to be able to do to that creature. If it's already smashing your face, I think he's already done its duty.
I would want you to run. Live your life.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking.
When I finally burst out of the cave into fading daylight, I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, chest heaving, and the weight of loss crashing over me. The tears came hard, unstoppable as I lay there, shattered, knowing I was the only one who'd made it out. As I forced myself to stand, steadying my breath, I heard it, Luke's voice, faint and choked with fear, calling out from the depths of the cave. "Sam, please, help me." I froze, every instinct screaming at me to ignore it, to remember what I'd seen, to remember that Luke was gone, But hearing his voice, broken and desperate, twisted my insides. The guilt clawed at me, sharper than any fear. I had left him. I had abandoned him. Okay, but you already know that
He's done.
he's dead, and this happened for your last 2 friends too.
Mm-hmm.
So you should just leave, Queen. The pleading continued, soft but relentless, each word pulling at the frayed edges of my sanity. Some part of me wanted to turn back, to run into the dark, convinced he was waiting, that I could still save him.
Yeah, no chance.
But another part, a colder, darker part, knew the truth. It wasn't Luke. It was some creature mimicking his voice, sinking its claws into the last threads of hope I had left. And yet, what if, somehow, it really was him? The thought tore at me, leaving me stranded there, helpless and shattered, unable to move forward or look back.
I don't know, his teeth are probably gone at this point. I don't know how much talking he'd be doing.
Okay, we're editing that out. Finally, I forced myself to turn away from the cave. Each step heavier than the last. I had to leave. I had to get out and tell someone what had happened, no matter how impossible it all seemed. But as I reached the edge of the forest, the realization settled in. I couldn't tell them the truth. They'd never believe me. No one would. I could already picture the looks of doubt, the whispers, the judgment. So I rehearsed the lie as I stumbled into town, every word twisting in my throat. I told them we were stalked by someone in the cave, that he'd ambushed us, attacked Jared and Luke. I described a faceless killer lurking in the dark, hunting us down one by one. It was easier that way, easier than trying to explain the unexplainable. They listened and they wrote it all down, but even as I spoke, a chill ran through me. In the back of my mind, Luke's voice still echoed, pleading, calling back into the dark. The cops didn't let it go. They pressed me for hours, asking the same questions over and over, probably because they think that you killed them.
Yeah, but they're not going to be able to ever find the bodies. Unless this creature just, like, goes out and, like, throws them out.
Well, she said they were in the cave, and the bodies are in the cave. They definitely probably would be able to find them.
They would die.
You don't know that. Soon enough, they began talking to my friends and family, probing into my relationship with the group. I could see it in their eyes. They suspected me. I was the last one out, the only one who'd made it back. And my story didn't add up. They searched the cave for days, combing through every passage, every cavern. Eventually, they found Ben's body, crumpled at the bottom of that pit, limbs twisted at unnatural angles, but Luke and Jared, they were gone. The remains were never recovered. And now when I close my eyes, I can still see the darkness of that cave, hear the echo of their voices, distant and pleading. No one believes me, and maybe after all of this, I'm not sure I even believe myself. The only thing I know for certain is that I'll never set foot in another cave for as long as I live. The thought alone makes my skin crawl, my heart race. The darkness isn't just unsettling to me now. It's a living, breathing terror wrapping itself around every corner, every shadow. Which, you shouldn't go into a cave ever unless there's a cave tour. You shouldn't go into a cave by yourself because
not by yourself.
You could easily get lost and die.
But this is like a walking cave all the way.
I have to go up and see where they are because I also want to see how Ben got lost in the first place.
Yeah.
I'm afraid of the dark in ways I never imagined, paranoia gnawing at me every time I turn off a light. Even here in my own home, I can feel it, the creature's gaze lurking just beyond the glow of my lamp, hidden in the pockets of darkness, patient and unyielding. It's waiting for me. I can feel it lurking, watching, waiting for that one moment when I'm left alone in the dark. I know deep down that it won't stop until it pulls me back into the shadows, just like it did with them. The end. Okay, going back up. Mammoth Cave, that's in Kentucky.
Is it?
Yep. And that is also where that guy got stuck because he was spelunking, I think, and he was like head down in the cave.
Oh, and then drowned?
No, no, he was there for days, and they made like a festival around it, and like people would come and take pictures and like talk to him, and they had like festival food and stuff.
I see.
And then he ended up dying.
He's still alive?
He ended up dying though while people were there because they couldn't get him out.
Yeah.
It's messed up.
So they were just celebrating his life until he died?
No, they were making him into a spectacle. Basically.
That's crazy. Was he like, help me? Like the whole time?
Yeah,
Just, like,
well, he wanted out the
pleading?
entire time, but
You were just, what the hell?
yeah. Okay, so it just starts off with Ben is missing.
Oh.
So you don't
Like
really know
already in
how
the
they went
cave.
missing. You don't even know how they got there.
Now it is my turn to read the stories. And I am going to be reading My Job is to Watch People Die, also on r/no sleep, by NoMass39. And then, so, yeah, my job is to watch people die. If you met me on the street and asked me what my job was, I would tell you that I worked from home consulting for an industrial laundry company. That is, after all, the cover story I have been provided with. The reality? My job is even simpler. Every Friday night, I dress up nice, report to a certain theater downtown, have a seat, and watch a performance. That's it. All it takes is a couple of hours out of my week, and I end up making 6 figures a year with every benefit you could possibly ask for. I know. It sounds too good to be true. Pretty much anybody on the planet would kill to have a job like mine. At least, perhaps until they found out just what kind of performance I'm made to attend. Before I start, though, I need you to keep in mind that I'm a good person. I donate thousands to the Rainforest Fund out of my every paycheck. I read that wrong.
Okay, girl.
And me and my kids volunteer at the food. Damn, you got a kid? I'm just watching people die. And me and my kids volunteer at the food bank weekly. I'm a devout believer, and I'm going to heaven when I die. After all, I, myself, have never hurt anybody, never raised a hand to injure any living soul. How could you possibly call me a sinner when all I ever do is watch?
Girl.
It started about 3 years ago, when their job offer found me when I was at my most desperate. All I was told was every Friday night I would attend a performance at my city's fanciest theater.
This sounds like Squid Games. All
Maybe.
the rich people watching people die.
Well, I mean, but this guy's getting paid to do it.
That's
Well,
true.
we don't even know why yet, either, I guess. Hopefully
Yeah, why
they
would you
talk
get
about
paid to watch people die?
it. Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
When I was most desperate, all I was told was every Friday night I would attend a performance at my city's fanciest theater. That was it. I was baffled at first. What the hell do I know about theater, or ballet, or orchestras? And they got me mixed up with some big shot critic. During our talk on the phone, however, they politely reassured me that no critical ability would be required. All we ask, they said, is for you to be there to bear witness.
Okay, so maybe they're trying to kill people legally.
Maybe.
Like, they have to, like, sign a contract before they get killed.
So what, this guy's eventually
so
gonna
this
die?
guy's like a notary person.
Oh.
Like, he has to be there to witness to make sure that they go through with the contract that they sign.
Maybe.
Maybe these people want to die in a certain way. Some people have that as a fetish.
Really?
Yeah, that they want to die. Like, they want someone to kill them. Like, that's their ultimate fetish.
Crazy. Or it's the ultimate cuckold.
Okay, keep going.
Having someone watch you die. Everything about it seemed scream scam, but I figured that, what the hell? Worst case scenario, I listened to a pitch for some MLM or timeshare, politely decline, and then walk out with some pocket money. I was baffled when I pulled up to the theater. Dozens, maybe even hundreds of people were streaming in, all in nice suits and gorgeous gowns. I'd thrown on the fanciest clothes I could afford, yet I still felt severely underdressed. The theater was totally rented out by my employer, and only my fellow coworkers were allowed in. How can you pay that many people? How much could it have cost to hire such a massive crowd just to attend this one performance? Who could possibly bankroll something like this? I tried to empty my mind and simply merge into that human tidal wave flowing through the doors. Every staff member was dressed in a refined all-black suit with black tie and undershirt. to the point they seemed to darken the air around them. Each wore a white comedy mask, the neoprene stretched into a grin of perpetual laughter, which struck me as almost mocking. They demanded that we hand over all electronic devices, even patting us down and running a metal detector over us. Then they reminded all attending not to leave their seats under any circumstance during the performance, recommending we take bathroom breaks before the show started, and to remain quiet and to keep our eyes open.
So you don't soil yourself whenever you watch this?
Or so then you do soil yourself whenever you watch this.
What? They just said go to the bathroom before.
That's what the person recommends, because
Yeah.
it's in the parentheses. Little bracket things.
So that you don't soil yourself while you're watching people get whatever. Keep going.
Maybe the thing is to watch the crowd while it's happening. Well, I guess not, since the wearing neoprene mask is.
I don't know.
They kept repeating the same mantra. No distractions, no diversions, no lapses in concentration. Remember, you are here to bear witness. If I'd been alone, I would have left right then and there. There was a
Tickling.
I thought I was going to say a tickling.
A tickling.
A tickling in the back of my brain. Some primate part of me screaming that there was something terribly wrong here. But mob mentality is a hell of a thing. Everybody else seemed calm. Nonplussed. Nonplussed?
Nonplussed. I don't know what that means, but that is what it says.
Handed their phones over without a fuss.
So does everybody
were a few
else know
holdouts.
what's happening?
There were a few holdouts.
Okay.
Oh, does everyone know what's happening? Probably.
Because
He's probably the only
everybody
new person.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. Or, yeah, by the end of it. No, because this was from the future, whenever they begun.
Oh yeah, it went back in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that they never died. Probably other newbies like me, but eventually they too relented.
Okay,
If
so
everyone
it
else,
just explained it right after.
yeah, there's newbies. If everyone else is going along with it, I figured, why shouldn't I? So the mob mentality. Who wants to be the one single paranoid bastard who missed out on an easy paycheck? Stepping into a gorgeous theater like something out of 3 centuries ago, I almost struck by the make of the stage. It looked like the back action of a piano. Strange levers and mahogany hammers looking like fingers, manipulating countless lines of piano wire, some over a dozen feet long. All the taut wires stretched in bizarre formations across the stage reminded me, somehow, of a spider's web. I could not fathom a machine so complex yet with such little apparent purpose. The nature of the performance always varies. Sometimes it's a work of Shakespeare, a ballet, an opera, hell, even a puppet show. The day it was a concert featuring a small chamber orchestra.
That day.
Of around 35. Students, it looked like. Young and inexperienced, with a nervous air about them as if this was their first time performing before such a crowd.
You need to get closer to the screen.
I know, it's hard for me to read it. Mostly a string section, plus one of each woodwind, and just a couple each on horns and percussion. The conductor was one of the staff members in the comedy masks. I was baffled. Who would put forward this much cash just for a small green orchestra to play in such a massive, prestigious venue? One of them must be a billionaire's kid, I figured. It was the only explanation. This, I've since realized, is always the best part. The beginning of the performance, when you can, if you try, lose yourself in the display and pretend everything is okay, that it's all normal. It was best on those lucky days when the performers on stage were completely unaware of just what sort of danger they were in.
So
That always makes it easier for everybody.
They don't even know. That my
I guess
theory
not.
was that they signed something and that the people in the audience had to witness it and be like, yeah, they did what they agreed to do, but
that means that the people
But no.
performing don't even know what's going to happen.
that's not what I just said.
Oh. Only people watching now.
Yeah, but I was saying maybe they were just trying to murder people legally, but obviously it's not legal since.
Probably not. Since none of them are consenting.
Yeah.
That are murdered. On that first day, I was as oblivious as they were, and simply enjoyed the music. Maybe some snob of the orchestral arts would hear their amateurish mistakes, but to my untrained ear, they sounded just fine, pleasant even. But one question began to worm its way into my head, a small nagging at first, which crescendoed
Right.
into a hammering on the inside of my skull. How much time has passed? At a certain point, I suspected the intermission was long overdue, but there were no windows and I had to part with my electronic wristwatch at the door. So really, getting any sense of time was impossible. I dismissed it as my lousy attention span at first, but eventually others began taking notice. No one dared speak, but among the fellow newbies, I noticed furrowed brows and sideways glances, confused and concerned. The performers seemed to be getting restless as well, whispering and gesturing to each other, and the conductor, who never ceased those robotic, sweeping motions of his gloved hands.
Huh?
It must have been 2 hours by then, if I had to guess, and they were starting to look exhausted.
Wait, what?
Dehydrated, some even looked as if they were
Oh.
about to quit playing.
The orchestra.
Continue performing! What?
The orchestra.
What did I say?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I was
just.
about to say,
it's, Is it like a play or is it just an orchestra?
I think the first time was an orchestra.
Okay.
The green, like, it was a bunch of little kids. Or new people, I don't know.
Okay.
Continue performing! In a moment, all of the piano wire loudly reverberated and stretched taut with the movements of those mechanical contraptions on stage, as the whole thing bristled and tensed as though it were a living thing, and that voice, cracking like thunder, seemed to emerge from the stage itself, with a mechanical roar, like the grinding of metal on metal, that seemed to frighten them into submission for a while. So it is probably a robot.
A robot.
A robot conducting everything.
Okay.
It wasn't until a half hour later that my life changed irreparably. They'd been playing a quiet sonata, so everybody could hear the sudden ting, accompanied by a pained yelp.
What?
My eyes leapt to one of the violinists. One of her strings had broken and happened to snap her right in the eye.
Oh my god.
I could see the shriek of scarlet bifurcate her pupil before emerging blood replaced the entire eye with a thick redness. She stood, clutching a hand over her eye and blindly grasping with the other, gesturing for medical help.
That would not
And as she did so,
make you bleed like that.
I don't know if it's taut enough.
I don't know about that.
Or it could have been one of the other, like he said,
Also,
there was a
if
bunch
you're
of
going
piano
like
wires
this-
in the.
If you're going like this, how's
like,
it gonna
think.
I don't buy it.
And as she did so, the strange lattice of levers and hammers and pulleys all roared and clacked to life like a bear trap being sprung. The machine's efficacy. The machine's efficacy was just as sudden, just as brutal. Those clockwork edifices moved like a pair of robotic arms. I knew that word. Aiming a wire for her neck as if trying to grope her. But they moved at such speed that the wire seemed to pass through her, like she wasn't even there. For a moment she seemed fine, unaffected, as if nothing happened at all.
I know what.
And then things began to fall off of her. Her head, severed at the neck, alongside the hand she'd been holding over her eye.
So stupid.
And the very fingertips of her other hand, which she had been grasping a little too high. Probably something like this. All had been cut cleanly with surgical precision. Time seemed to slow as they all went clattering wetly to the floor, and the girl's body soon followed, as if it took a few moments for gravity to set in, or perhaps for her body to realize she was dead.
What? is happening?
What do you mean? This one's good. I like this one. It happened so fast, it was hard to be properly horrified. It was more like awe, maybe. Everybody stared at the chunks of meat that had once been a promising young woman with hopes and dreams. The spiderweb of wires was still rumbling and shaking all around them. And the mechanical voice roared once more, "Continue performing."
Wait, let's check and make sure that the video is still good, because it's saying... Okay, that's good.
They were given no further warnings. A few of them jumped from their seats out of sheer instinct. Not even thinking, none of them made it more than a step before the wires divided them in twain.
What?
The rest just kept playing exactly as they had been, as if their brain froze up in what they'd witnessed and simply ran on autopilot, until their faculties slowly returned to them and they realized that this instinct had saved their lives.
So, if they mess up, they get killed.
I guess so. It's Hunger Games of performing arts.
Okay.
Sort of. I mean, you're not fighting each other, but it's the last one who doesn't mess up.
Yeah.
Maybe.
More like Squid
let's
Games.
see. I don't think so. I've never watched that.
It is definitely more like Squid
Where once beauty filled the room, now the orchestra had been reduced to a discordant sound like a long, shuddering whine.
Why are they paying people for this?
Like a mocking parody of music. They gripped their instruments with trembling, sweaty hands, playing just well enough to avoid stoking the ire of those quivering wires stretched taut all around them. They realized gradually that they were allowed to speak. Immediately they began wailing hard enough to almost to mercifully drown out the dismal
Cacophony.
cacophony that was once music. Some begging and pleading with the staff, others screaming out threats, be they legal or physical. Be thy name. Nothing they said could shake the masked men and women in the slightest. They stood at order like statues, unflinching. Realizing this, they turned their attention to us, a wall of red, weepy eyes scanning the crowd for any hint of mercy, begging us to band together against the staff, calling us all sick bastards for just sitting there and watching them die. The blonde woman on violin had the most genius and cruel strategy of all. She merely began telling us about herself. Everything she could think of poured out in between sniffles and tears. My name is Vera Hayes. This my husband over there. Wait, oh, that's my husband over there. She gestured to a dark-haired man on drums. He'd been the quietest of them all, seeming to be saving his strength. We have a little girl. She's 8 years old, and she loves her mama and papa. Her name is Lucy. She loves horses, and I was saving us to maybe give her riding lessons one day. I desperately wanted to cover my ears, but knew it would be against the rules. Why can't she just shut the hell up? I thought bitterly, grinding my teeth. I truly hated her. Hated her more than I'd ever hated before. But why? Some dim remnant of my reason asked. She's a victim here. She's done nothing wrong. But I realized I hated her because she kept reminding me she was human. Reminding me of that I was doing to her. Reminding me of what I was doing to her. What we all were doing to her. Sitting here in complicity.
Read normally.
And it almost worked too. I almost resolved to save her. But then came the boom of a gunshot from far behind me.
So it
the
went
shot had come... What?
It went from a robot to a gunshot?
I mean, one of the staff members probably were tired of it and just shot her dead.
Oh my god. What is this story? And who comes up with this shit?
The shot had come from one of the tragedians standing amid the upper gallery. I was certain I almost made the mistake of looking back. Instead, I kept my eyes locked forward and merely imagined who it was, just had their brains splattered across their seat.
Oh,
Had
so
they snuck a phone in and tried calling 911?
They killed one of the spectators.
Yeah. Had they tried to make a break for it? Or maybe they just couldn't take it anymore and made the fatal decision to look away from the horror.
Oh
I tried to
my
distract
God.
myself by studying the impossible mechanism animating the blood-soaked piano wire. I couldn't figure it out. It was an impossible machine existing in defiance at all basic laws of geometry, and seemed to have no means of controlling it, instead operating automatically with some malignant intelligence. Perhaps it was an extension of whatever creatures composed the stage itself. It was a living thing, of that much I was certain, if breathed beneath the performers, and their blood soaked into its floorboards in moments, as if consumed. After some hours, the orchestra had gone quiet, having screamed themselves hoarse. I couldn't imagine being in their shoes. Even just watching them perform was a test of endurance. Many of them were oozing blood all over their instruments, from scarlet cuts where the skin had split. The woman on the French horn was struggling hardest of all, her lungs and hands burning with exhaustion. "I can't!" She eventually cried out in a hoarse little... I can't! She eventually cried out in a hoarse little wheeze, horn slamming to the ground as her body gave out.
Oh my god, chill out.
I'm sorry. I like to get into it. What's wrong with that? I'm imagining it. Sorry, I can't do any... A wire passed through flesh in an instant, and suddenly she had no mouth to speak, no eyes to see, no mind to think with. All of it lay splattered upon the stage, with sated itself. Sated? Sated? No, sated. Which sated...
Sated.
I feel like it would be sated. All of it lay splattered upon the stage, which sated itself upon the spilled vitae. Right there. Another gunshot. I quivered in my seat, sweat beading on my forehead from the terror. Somebody in the audience had looked away, and I realized I had just been about to do the same thing, had the sudden sound not knocked me out of my stupor. Most of the performers went in similar ways over the next few hours, either making mistakes or their bodies giving out. As monstrous as it may sound, I was quietly praying for them to get it over with. They were dead the moment that they walked on stage. Why drag it out for all these hours, just for the inevitable to happen anyway? I recognize now that it's almost impossible to make that choice, to simply give in and accept death in defiance of all our natural instincts. But the auditorium now reeked from the audience members voiding their bowels, and the damn woman next to me just wouldn't stop crying, wouldn't stop at all. Vera and her husband lasted the longest of all, perhaps because they had each other. Over a dozen hours had passed, maybe even 2.
What?
Like just maybe 2 hours or maybe a dozen?
But he said over a dozen hours had passed, maybe even 2.
So like 12 to 24 hours?
No.
Or 2 to 12 hours?
Over a dozen... It just doesn't make sense the way that they worded that.
No, they didn't. Not too much. Some longer duet and perfect sting. Oh, over a dozen hours had passed, maybe even 2. And they were still playing a little duet in perfect sync, despite everything. By now they were simply talking to each other, as if nothing was wrong, as if we weren't even watched, as if we weren't even watched. Okay. Baby, when we get out of here, I'm going to take you to McDonald's. I'm going to take you to Martha's Vineyard. I know I've been saying that for so long, but God, I wasted so much money on that stupid fucking motorcycle, he said. Lucy's gonna love it. Oh, yeah. Bear chuckled. I don't know. It might be boring for a little girl. Isn't it all a bunch of old people up there? He laughed weakly. Oh, maybe in town. But you know her. Once you get her in the water, you can't get her back out. She's a natural-born swimmer, I swear. Think we'll see her in the Olympics someday, haha.
That's how your parents talked about you.
Yeah, no, literally. Mom, and now here I am. Not in the Olympics. Trying to find where I was. It was surreal to watch, like I was peeking in on a private conversation a couple was having in their own home.
Wait, question.
What?
Are Vera and What's-His-Face performing, or are they
performing.
spectating? How are they talking then?
Because they can just talk to each other
he's
while they
playing
play.
the drums, and she's playing what?
Violin? No, the violinist died. She's playing somewhere she doesn't need her mouth.
I guess so.
But yeah, you don't remember that? Talk about being married?
I do remember that, but I
Yeah.
didn't remember what they played. I was wondering how they were talking to each other.
But I could tell both of them were trying to maintain some illusion of normalcy. Anything to keep themselves psychologically intact as their hours passed. Even as they tried to smile and laugh, there was a quiver in their tone, a desperation, a fear of what might happen if there was a single break in their conversation. A lot of what they said was too personal to relate here. They went into old regrets, past mistakes, resolved every argument they ever had in all their years together. It was like they wanted to make sure they said everything they had to say before the end came. I think I owe them, at least, their privacy.
Am I crying?
I mean, it's sweet what they did. It's not that.
It's sad. They're
I mean,
about
it's
to
sad.
die.
It's sad, but it's sweet that they came to that conclusion in this situation.
They really got us with their romance in here.
Yeah.
In
A
the
little
scary
rom
story.
com,
It's not a
a
rom-com.
romantic horror.
Mm-hmm.
But the husband was slowly deteriorating.
The
He'd
husband?
moved too quick. What?
You said the husband?
Did I? But the husband was slowly deteriorating. He'd moved too quick, caught the symbol with his hand, leaving a wide gash along his palm. How do you hit it that hard?
Probably because
this
he's
thing must be
been-
made out of freaking razor blades.
He's been doing it for the past dozen hours, is what that guy said.
I feel like symbols aren't that sharp though.
Yeah, but if you've been doing it for that long and you hit it and it over and over again, you're eventually gonna wear it out of your hand, right?
All I can think of is the dude we watched at the bar in Texas, where he's playing the hand
Oh
symbols.
yeah, that was awesome.
That's why I'm like doubtful of it.
Shout out to Velvet
The Velvet Love Box.
Love Box
Yeah.
in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, it's real. He was slowly deteriorating, leaving a wide gash along his palm that was gushing blood at a terrifying rate. Now he was getting woozier and woozier, swaying dizzily, his eyes unfocusing, his speech becoming slurred, and his playing sloppy. Vera desperately tried to keep him focused. Talk to me, baby. Think of the beach. Lucy's going to love the seashells. She'll pick her favorite and put it on that little stand in her room with all her little trophies. She rambled on, but by the end, all he could manage was half-hearted grunts of affirmation. He was leaning in his seat, and then his drumstick went flying right out of his hand, sending a cloud of pink mist through the air along its path. And yet, he kept going through the motions of playing as if he didn't even notice. Then a sudden clarity formed in his eyes, and he stared at his empty hand in disbelief. And then the piano wire was tensing and strumming all around him. I imagine it sounded like that. You know what I mean? You know what I'm talking about?
This is not the time. Keep going.
Just break all the suspense. And then in an instant, he was up from his seat and racing towards us. He knew it was over. He just wanted to strike out at the world if he could. One last act of defiance. He even locked eyes with me, and I'll never forget the look on his face. Why are you watching this? You sick bastards. You sick twisted. He threw his remaining drumstick, and the trajectory would have delivered it right to me, but the piano wires lacerated it in mid-air, slicing it into it from 100 different directions until it disappeared into a cloud of sawdust. And then they did the same to him. Vera didn't scream or sob. She just tensed and let out the tiniest little gasp. Like when you're at the doctor's and know the shot is inevitable, but it still stings anyways. And then she was all alone. She looked at us like she wanted to speak, wanted to say something, to express what was happening inside of her. But what was there left to say? She'd spent almost a full day screaming herself hoarse with every combination of words she could think of. None of it helped. None of it meant anything.
Oh, maybe even 2 dozen.
That's what I was saying.
I understand
12 to
now.
24 hours,
I
yeah.
understand now. I thought they were saying like 12 hours, maybe even 2. And I was like,
Like 2 hours, maybe even a dozen, which that's still such a wide gap, it doesn't make sense. Yes, I understand.
but 2 dozen.
Hello, Moj.
Got it.
Yeah. Instead, she expressed herself through music. She began to play the most mournful, sobering
Dang.
There's a lot of sobbing, so I thought it might have been sobering solo I had ever heard. One I knew she making up as she went along. I knew she was making up. See, that time it wasn't me. It
Jordan.
was the story.
Keep going.
Making it up as she went along. One with such communicated... I'm just messing up. One with which she communicated those parts of herself that words could not encompass. She stared us all down, eyes red and bloodshot, making eye contact individually, as if to remind us that we were not a shapeless mass, that we were all individually responsible. I only barely remember the sound of it now, as if I heard it in a dream. And yet, even now, the memory tears at my heart. Wait.
Tears.
I'm messing up bad. She performed for what felt like an eternity, and then in the end, she slowly, calmly set down her violin, stood up, and took a bow. And then she was unmade. Everyone stood up around me all of a sudden, and I was immediately caught up into it too. I said that wrong. Performing a standing ovation that dragged on and on. We screamed, shouted, cried, and threw things, smashed our fists against the seats, tore at our hair, laughing and danced with each other. It was the ultimate catharsis after all the silence, after a full day of holding it all in. Never before had I felt so connected to a crowd of people on some deep spiritual level. We marched out of the theater, stumbling like a procession of ghouls with blank faces and tired eyes. The staff were as polite as ever, thanking us for attending the performance and hoping that we enjoyed the show.
After they just shot multiple people?
Who
the hell is working at this?
Some were dragging the bodies of the shot audience members out of the theater. As I finally emerged into the outside world, I was stunned to find it was still the same night I had entered. At least 20 hours had passed inside the theater. I was sure of it. But for the outside world, only 2 hours had passed. Exactly the duration listed on their job offer. I'd never been explicitly told not to reveal what I'd seen there, and now I knew why. Nobody believed me. Or worse, maybe, they were covering it up. I swear to God, the police dispatcher laughed at me over the phone. I swore I'd never go back. I'd been part of some evil, something unfathomable, and it would haunt me forever. But the next year was one of constant desperation, debt climbing as job opportunities declined at equal rates. I held out for about a year, but eventually I gave in, and to my horror, the next performance was easier, now that I knew what to expect. And then the next was easier still, and the next. The performance is always different, but the end result is always the same. I have to remind myself that I'm not culpable for what they're doing there. All I do is watch. We watch people die every day. In the news and online, people suffering horrible fates, often in places our own countries help to destabilize. How are my actions any different, really? We all have to accept that terrible things happen in this world, and all we can do about them is either look away or look at the horror right in the eye. Is choosing to look away? No. Is choosing to look away more moral? Or is it only more cowardly? And besides, wouldn't it be worse for them if there wasn't an audience? If they had to die there in the dark, alone? No. No one seeing? No one caring? No one remembering? After all, someone has to bear witness.
Damn.
That was a good story. I mean, it was a crazy story. But I would have liked to known what the piano strings were.
You know, what is that? But it definitely, it's got some ties.
Oh, I guess someone said gladiators and their spectators come to mind. It's fair. That's good.
I think it's mostly just talking about how basically this is a horror story that people go through every day.
Yeah, that was also true.
Where we just
consume news
watch
and
all
media.
No, we're watching all these horrible things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, also like Reddit 50/50 and
And so-
stuff. People just watch.
That's not what I'm talking about at all.
What are you talking about?
You choose to do Reddit 50/50. You
That's fair.
don't ever do that. But I'm talking about how you just watch the news and you're just watching all these horrible things happen to people. And I mean, we don't do anything about it, so we're just as guilty as this guy
Yeah.
in the story.
I wouldn't believe him either. If I was a dispatcher.
Which is crazy because we all do the exact same thing every day whenever we watch the news, seeing people die in horrible ways.
Just watch it. Just
Yep.
consume.
Yep.
Born to consume.
So that got dark.
It got a little deep. Well, yeah. That was fun. That was our first time doing this. I'm just going to end it. We're ending it.
First time doing this, and
Yeah.
now we're done. Hope you guys enjoyed the stories. Let us know any feedback that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Like maybe don't let Jordan read. He sucks at it.
well,
Oh, I'm just kidding. I did mess up a few parts, but
that's okay. Maybe we shouldn't smoke/drink before we do this.
yeah, that is also true.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.